非常欢迎各位热爱艺术也关心我们艺术产业的各位亲爱的朋友啊，来到我们今天的论坛。那么今天的论坛在这个场次呢，从3点半到5点钟。那么我们最主要的讨论的题目呢，我们是要从艺术品的这个鉴价制度呢。有没有需要来建立我们大中华区的这个鉴价的这个制度那么今天呢也非常荣幸我们邀请到美国的鉴价师的协会那么3A 协会的主席 Krulik 来到我们的现场，我们热烈掌声欢迎。那么在我们艺术品在整个的交易市场里面呢，事实上呢鉴定跟鉴价呢两个呢是非常密切的那么在这个除了就是鉴价的这个鉴价师，那么这个鉴价的制度建立之外呢，我们对于鉴定的部分呢，事实上也有很紧密的连结。所以呢，今天呢，我们也非常荣幸呢，请到中国文化部的科技艺术的研究所的艺术品科研中心的主任尹主任，也请各位掌声欢迎。在这里呢，我补充介绍一下我自己。我自己呢是台湾生命力文教基金会的执行长，那么同时呢也是目前在台湾，那么我也担任了这个艺术品的拍卖官的一个这样子的一个职务那么同时呢，也因为我的工作呢在立法院。那么对于一些跟文化艺术相关的这个法案的一些推动跟研究那么我也跟我们产经研究协会呢也合作很多。那譬如像在今年的7月1号，我们国内通过的博物馆法也就是我们呢跟产经研究室共同来做一个推动的在这里呢跟大家补充说明一下。所以呢，我是尤文梅，跟大家问好。谢谢。那因为今天的讲座呢，时间非常宝贵，在这里呢，我们首先就邀请我们的这个美国鉴价师协会的这个前主席 Krulik， 我们邀请他来做精彩的演说。Patty， please。
Thank you so much for the honor of asking me to speak today. In particular, I'd like to thank Ms. Joyce Ka and Sunny Hung of the Taipei Art Research Center for seeing to my every needs, and thank you to Mr. Long Seng She and Chao Ting Chu of the Asia Art Economic Research Center. As an American art expert, having the opportunity to visit with you here in Taipei is truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I thank you so much for making it possible, and I'm humbled to be in the company of such stellar speakers. As to my PowerPoint, I wanted to use art of the American West as a metaphor for the growth of the appraisal standards over the past 30 years. So, why do we have standards, and who administers those standards? If you can imagine a time when appraisers shot from the hip, assigned values to all kinds of property from real estate, cattle, fine art, and business with little or no reasoning. Banks would lend on the value of those properties. Taxes were dependent on property values. And who was assigning those values and what were their methodologies? There have always been appraisers that followed clear methodologies, but there were many more that did not. Hence, with the crisis of the savings and loan industry in the early 1980s, the need for improvement in appraisal practices throughout the United States was emphasized. The importance of ensuring that appraisals were based upon established, recognized standards, and most importantly, were independent and unbiased. Enter the Appraisal Foundation. The Appraisal Foundation is a not-for-profit corporation that is charged by the Congress of the United States with the responsibility of establishing, improving, and promoting the minimum standards of appraiser qualifications and criteria. All the leading professional organizations in the United States and Canada met to establish and agree upon a generally accepted set of minimum standards. Those standards were adopted by the Appraisal Foundation, which was established in 1987 to implement the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. I will refer to that in future as USPAP, Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. USPAP is recognized throughout the United States and is generally accepted as the minimum, the bare minimum of standards for appraisers. The Appraisal Foundation in Washington has 3 arms. I know this is a little dry, but we're getting to the good stuff. So the Appraisal Foundation has an Appraisal Qualifications Board, a Practices Board, and a Standards Board. The Appraisal Qualifications Board establishes the qualification criteria for state licensing, certification, and recertification of appraisers. All state-certified appraisers must meet the minimum education, experience, and examination requirements promulgated by the AQB. The AQB also developed voluntary criteria for personal property appraisers. So state licensing is only for appraisers of real estate, real property in the United States. Any personal property is not licensed at this point and hopefully will not be ever. The Appraisal Standards Board establishes the rules for developing an appraisal and reporting its results. In addition, it promotes the use and the understanding and the enforcement of USPAP. Then the Appraisal Practices Board is charged with the responsibility of identifying and issuing opinions on recognized valuation methods and technologies, which may also, it may apply to all disciplines of the appraisal profession. The Appraisal Practices Board offers voluntary guidance in topic areas in which appraisers and users of appraisers feel they are most needed. So that is an advisory council to the Appraisal Foundation. And as issues change, they recommend certain changes to USPAP and to the guidelines for appraisers. So there are various disciplines for appraisers. I use Clint Eastwood as the man that is applying the discipline. So in the United States, the only appraisers that are licensed are real estate appraisers. Each of the 50 states has guidelines that meet the minimum criteria established by the Appraisal Foundation. Personal property appraisers are not licensed by any governing body. Those of us that are members of the three main appraisal organizations, that's the Appraisers Association of America, which is my organization, the Appraisers Society of America, and the International Society of Appraisers. We all voluntarily adhere to the standards and criteria put forth by the Appraisal Foundation. Appraisers of personal property are appraisers of real estate, business valuation, livestock, machinery and technical equipment, gems and jewelry, as well as the fine and decorative arts. The uses of appraisals and appraisers in the United States and abroad have diverse applications. This applies to every discipline as outlined above. They need to be credible and independent, and it is essential where art and antiques are becoming financial instruments as stocks and bonds and real estate have been in the past. Financing, purchase price, cost basis for real estate, for art and objects, litigation, property tax, divorce, charitable donation, purchase and sale negotiation, depreciation, and the internal business and personal financial planning are all reasons for people to have appraisals. Therefore, it is of great importance that the appraisers adhere to standards and methodologies so that their appraisal reports are transparent and credible. In the United States, the Internal Revenue Service, which is responsible for tax collection, has their own guidelines for what constitutes a qualified appraiser. It is an individual that has earned a designation from a recognized appraisal organization and has met the minimum education and experience requirement. Also, they define an appraiser, a qualified appraiser, as an individual that performs appraisals regularly and receives compensation for their work. An individual that demonstrates verifiable education and experience in valuing property that is like the subject property of the appraisal. In other words, expertise in a particular area. And they also define a qualified appraiser as an individual that has not been disqualified by the IRS, and an individual that creates reports that are USPAP compliant. So what is USPAP? USPAP, the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. It is the minimum standard that appraisers adhere to in the United States. It has numerous components, most of which apply to real property, but some essential concepts are in place for all appraisal disciplines. The purpose of USPAP is to promote and maintain the highest level of public trust in appraisal practice by establishing requirements for appraisers. It is essential that appraisers develop and communicate their analyses, opinions, and conclusions to the intended users of their services in a manner that is meaningful and not misleading. It provides definitions for valuation, methodologies, and approaches. For example, an appraisal is the act or the process of developing an opinion of value. An opinion of value, not a fact. Fair market value, that is, the price is defined as the price achieved in an open market between a willing buyer and a willing seller, neither being under any compulsion to sell and both being aware of the relevant facts. So that market for fair market value, we usually refer to as the open auction market. Their definition for retail replacement value is the highest value that a property that would be required to replace a property with another of similar age, quality, origin, appearance, provenance, condition within a reasonable amount of time. Then there are definitions for the approaches to value. The income approach, which is used for real estate, the cost approach, which is used for business valuation, and then the market data approach, which is used for personal property. And that we, as appraisers of the fine and decorative arts, use almost exclusively. They also define, USPAP also defines ethics, which is, of course, the conduct, management, and confidentiality. Conduct is that the appraiser must perform the assignment with impartiality, objectivity, and independence. In other words, there must be no correlation between the value of the object and the cost to do the appraisal. You cannot charge a percentage of the value to do the appraisal. That's one of the cardinal rules. Management. The appraiser is paid a fee for his work, and that fee is not contingent on value, and the appraiser is not biased by the resultant use of the appraisal. In other words, if you go into a house and someone says, I want to know what the fair market value is for this work of art because I want to sell it, an appraiser must divorce the idea that they would have access to that work of art for sale so that they can produce an independent and impartial report. Confidentiality. The appraiser must preserve and protect the appraiser-client relationship. And except in a court of law where you're subpoenaed to give information, your report is purely between you and the client. As far as competency goes, USPAP defines competency as that the appraiser must be competent to perform the work or decline the work. So if, as an American art specialist, if somebody asked me to appraise a Monet, a French Impressionist work, I would have to decline that because it is not in my area of expertise. We must define the scope of work, the reason for the report, whether it's insurance, inventory listing, whether it's for fair market value, for a donation to a museum or an estate tax report. We must disclose all of the pertinent information. We must disclose the conditions under which we examined the work of art, whether we had proper lighting, whether we were in a barn at night and couldn't see very well, whether there were conditions that limited our inspection of the work.